In Unit 10, Part 2, we are talking about slope-intercept form, which is, again, a very important concept for you to understand for this year and as we move into algebra next year. So if you have any questions at all, please make sure you ask them for this week. So I copied and pasted out of the book what slope-intercept form is. It's a linear equation of the form y equals mx plus b. It's said to be in slope-intercept form. The slope is m and the y-intercept is b. So if you look at y equals mx plus b, it looks a lot like function form, which we practiced in Unit 9. And that's why we did that, to get us ready for slope-intercept form. So I'm just going to rewrite slope-intercept form. It's y equals mx plus b. So when you write this, m is going to be your slope, which we just talked about in Part 1. B is going to be your y-intercept. We talked about intercepts in Unit 9, so the y-intercept is where a line crosses the y-axis. Your y and your x are actually a y and an x in the equation. Okay, those don't stand for anything, those are actually your y. So if you look at this example right here, where it says numbers, your slope, or m, would be 2, your y-intercept, or b, would be 3. So we've got to make sure we get this down before we move on to Part 3, where we're actually going to graph these. So the first section just says identify the slope and y-intercept with the given equation or graph. So our first one is y equals 2x plus 1. If you remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx. Sorry about that. It equals y equals mx plus b. So m is my slope, the number in front of the x. So m equals 2. My y-intercept, or my b, is then the constant number. Constant meaning the number without variable. So that's going to be 1. If you look at number 2, you have y equals negative 5x. So again, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. My m, or slope, is the number in front of the x, which is negative 5. That negative sign has to go with it. It's negative 5. Now, if you look, I don't have a constant here. I don't have the extra part, so my y-intercept is just 0. You have to put that the y-intercept is 0. You can't just say that it's not. It is 0 in that case. Coming down to 2 and 4, if you look, these are not in y equals mx plus b form. They're not in slope-intercept form, which is, again, the same thing as function form. In Unit 9, we practice taking these and putting them in function form. So for number 3, I'm going to box and rewrite it just out of good habits. And then my goal is to get y by itself. So I need to move the 2x over first, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I am subtracting 2x because it was positive to begin with on the left side. So these cancel each other out. So I have 3y equals, and then remember, 6 minus 2x is not negative 4x. I cannot combine these because they don't both have an x. So I just write negative 2x, the negative comes down, that 6 was positive to begin with, so I have plus 6. Now, I'm halfway home. My goal is to get y by itself, so I need to divide everything by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I just have y. Negative 2 divided by 3, I'm just going to leave as the fraction, negative 2 over 3x. That's going to be my slope, so it's totally fine if it's a fraction. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. So this is y equals mx plus b form, or function form. Now, I'm not there yet. The goal is to identify the slope and the y-intercept. So in this case, my slope would be negative 2/3. It's whatever's in front of the x, and the negative has to go with it. My intercept would then be 2. So that is my slope and my y-intercept. I'm going to erase this in a second, so if you need to write anything down, go ahead and pause the video. Looking at number 4, I'm in the same situation where it is not in slope-intercept form first. So I'm going to start by boxing and rewriting. And then I need to put it in slope-intercept form, meaning get y by itself. So I'm going to start by subtracting 4x from both sides. Again, I'm subtracting it because it was positive to start with. Those cancel out. The negative has to come down. Okay, so it's negative 2y equals, again, this is not 4x. I cannot put them together, so it's negative 4x plus 8. Now my goal is to get y by itself. I need positive y by itself, so I need to divide everything by negative 2. So negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1, so I just have y. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2 with my x. And then 8 divided by negative 2 is negative 4, so I'm going to have minus 4 there. My slope is then the number that's in front of the x, which is 2 in this case. My y-intercept is my constant, which is negative 4. The negative has to go there. For 5 and 6, our directions are still the same. We're trying to identify the slope and the y-intercept, but now we're doing it from a graph. Okay, so we need to figure out what m is and what v is. Now, you can do whichever one you want first. I tend to think it's easier to find the y-intercept first. So the y-intercept is the spot where this line crosses the y-axis. So the y-axis is this vertical axis, and it crosses right here. Now, when I do the y-intercept, I only care about the y-coordinate. So the coordinates for this are 0, 2. So my y-intercept would be 2, because that's where it crosses. The next thing I need to do is figure out what my slope is. So I want to pick another line, another point to use along with that one. So I have points there, I have points here, I have points here. There's points all along the line. I pick those points where these lines intersect, so it makes it easier to pick the point there. Alright, so I'm going to erase that and draw my point back up here. So I'm going to use this point right here. So remember, I want to go from left to right, and I want to do rise over run. So to get from one point to the next, going left to right, I go up 1, so my rise is 1, and I go over to the right, so my run is 2. So that means that my slope is going to be 1/2 or 1 over 2. Looking at number 6, again, I tend to start by finding the y-intercept first, finding my v first, because it's the point where my line crosses the y-axis, which in this case is right here. So if you look, it actually worked out to the exact same thing as the one before. My y-intercept is at 2. It crosses at 2. Now I need a second point so that I can find my slope. I'm going to pick this point right here. So again, to find the slope, I want to do the rise over the run. I'm going to go from the left to the right. So that means I'm going to start at this point up here at 0, 2. My rise is actually negative 2. I'm going down 2. My run is a positive 1. So my slope in this case would be negative 2. On the next page, we are talking about the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. So this is something that you're really just going to have to memorize. There's really no shortcut way to think about it. So if you look over here on the left, it says 2 non-vertical parallel lines have the same slope. For example, the parallel lines A and B below both have a slope of 2. So just a reminder, parallel lines are lines that are never going to touch. And as it just told us, parallel lines will always have the same slope. For perpendicular lines, it gets a little bit harder. It says 2 non-vertical perpendicular lines, such as lines A and C below, have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other. So remember, perpendicular lines are ones that intersect and form 90-degree angles. Their slopes are negative reciprocals. Now, you should remember what a reciprocal is. You've probably never heard of a negative reciprocal before. If I have the fraction 2/3, okay, that's my original fraction, you should remember the reciprocal means to flip it. So make it 3 over 2. Now, the negative reciprocal means I put a negative sign in front of it. Now, say I had the slope negative 1 over 4. The reciprocal of that would be 4 over 1, and then the negative reciprocal would mean I turn this and make it positive, so my slope would just be 4. And we'll look at some more examples of that here in a second. as you scroll down, it says for the given equation, find the slope of a parallel line and the slope of a perpendicular line. So for these, the first thing we need to do is make sure they're in slope-intercept form, which remember is y equals mx plus b. So number one is already in y equals mx plus b form. So I need to start by finding the slope. Remember that the slope is the number in front of the x. So in this case, my slope is 5 over 4. That means parallel lines have the exact same slope. So my parallel slope would also be 5 over 4. Then I also need to find the perpendicular slope. And remember that the perpendicular slope is the negative reciprocal, which means I need to flip this fraction to make it 4 over 5, and then change it from positive to negative. So it would be negative 4 over 5 there. Alright, let's look at number 2. For number 2, I'm not in slope-intercept form yet, so I'm going to erase this real quick just to give me some room. I'm not in y equals mx plus b form, so that's my first step, is to turn it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to box and rewrite. I have a 1 in front of my y already, which is good, but I need to move this x over. Since the x is positive, I need to subtract to move it over. So those cancel. I get y equals. Remember, 7 minus 3x is absolutely not negative 4x. I just write them over here together. I'm subtracting 3x, so it's negative. 7 was positive to start with, so it's positive still. So now I'm in y equals mx plus b form. My original slope, which is the number in front of x, is going to be negative 3. My parallel slope is going to be exactly the same, so it's also negative 3. And then my perpendicular slope is the negative reciprocal. So reciprocal means to flip it. 3 as a fraction is 3 over 1, so I'm going to make this 1 over 3. And then since it was negative to start with, it's going to be positive 1/3. So you don't actually have to write that positive. I'm going to leave number 3 for you guys to try and make sure you check that with the answer key. And then there is some practice with solving equations on the bottom. Please make sure you do these problems. If you have any trouble solving equations, ask me. Ask me for help if you don't understand how to solve these equations, because those are crucial basic algebra foundations.